There's a mile 16 marker on the right-hand side. This is the end of the awesome part. The next 5 miles are going to be really tough. 4 difficult hills coming up. The climb starts right there at the mile marker. We're climbing up I-95 right now. I-95 bridge coming up.
At this point in the Boston Marathon, after 16 miles, if you've gone too fast, you're likely gonna pay. I shot a lot less video the second half of the race as I began to lose gas, so you'll see fewer video clips that I shot the last 10 miles of the race compared to the first 16 miles. As you enter into Newton, you continue northeast on State Route 16, which is also Washington Street. After the mile 16 marker, you immediately start the climb on this overpass over Interstate 95, which is also State Route 128. Then, after the bridge, you keep on going up until you believe that you've crested the hill, only to make a turn and realize that you have more to climb. You have a couple of smaller hills on this bigger hill. You then descend past the mile 17 marker toward the Newton Fire Station number 2, where you make a big right turn from Route 16 onto Commonwealth Avenue or Route 30. You climb up the second hill, which is not as long as the first hill, but is still a challenge. After the first crest, you make a slight descent. You go past the mile 18 marker and then ascend slightly before a long descent during mile 19, which is mostly downhill. You descend on Commonwealth Avenue by Newton City Hall and you reach the mile 19 marker near Walnut Street. That's where on the northwestern corner of Walnut and Commonwealth are the statues of a young Johnny Kelley and older Johnny Kelley, a famous runner who won 2 Boston Marathons and finished 61 Boston Marathons in his life. You then climb a hill that many people confuse with Heartbreak Hill after the mile 19 marker, with a little descent after the crest. At some point, you'll see on your right the Heartbreak Running Company store. You'll go past the mile 20 marker, and you'll find yourself climbing Heartbreak Hill. It's an ascent of roughly a half mile. You'll pass the mile 21 marker after the crest as you descend the hill. You then go down past Boston College and continue on Commonwealth Avenue. There's a small hill after Heartbreak Hill. Don't worry, it's not as bad as it'll look. You'll then pass the Evergreen Cemetery on your right, and then the Chestnut Hill Reservoir also on your right, and then the mile 22 marker before you leave Newton for Brookline. This is where the course switches from Commonwealth to Chestnut Hill Avenue.
That's I-95 on the right and the left. Crossing out the big hill. Hill number 1 is done. Now we got downhill here. Now we go downhill, hill number 1. The 2 will be at the fire station. I lied. Hill number 1 is not done. We got this little piece here. The famous right turn on the Commonwealth. Go Beach! And we get hill number 2 coming up right after this. Here's the fire station. Sorry.
Go, guys! Woo! Way to go!
Hill number 2. Hill number 2 is done. Hill number 3. Newton Hill number 3 coming up. This is not Heartbreak Hill. This is Heartbreak Hill. It's the toughest hill on the course. Crest. This is a real bitch. Down Heartbreak Hill. There's Boston College, mile 21 marker on the right. Heartbreak Hill is done. We got one little hill after this.
As you run past the Chestnut Hill Reservoir, the course switches from Commonwealth Avenue to Chestnut Hill Avenue. Look out for the tracks on this street. You'll go by the mile 22 marker around this point. You'll then reach Cleveland Circle, where you'll see a Dunkin' Donuts. You'll turn left onto Beacon Street and enter Brookline, a city of which the marathon course goes through for roughly 3 miles. In the distance, you'll see the Citgo Sign in Kenmore Square, which gradually becomes bigger as you approach. You'll pass the mile 23 and mile 24 markers. Miles 23, 24, and 25 are net downhill, but there are still some uphills along this stretch. Nothing compared to the Newton Hills, but at this point in the race, a real physical and mental trial. Looking at the map, it appears sometime after the mile 24 marker that you will enter the city of Boston. You'll climb up over an overpass as you approach the mile 25 marker and enter Kenmore Square. At this point, the Citgo sign will look gigantic. This is where the Boston Red Sox fans coming from the morning Patriots Day baseball game at Fenway Park traditionally come to cheer for the runners. You'll then make a right turn onto Commonwealth Avenue and you will pass the 1 mile to go line.
Citgo sign.